What's up, girly pops? Welcome to the very first full race weekend episode of the MotoGirlyPops podcast. I'm Daxa, and the garbage addict, and the other side of your screen is
the TVRoomRaccoon.
Of course. Raccoon, how was your very first weekend of 2026? Your very, very first raw seek?
It was amazing.
Right?
It was genuinely way beyond what anyone could have been expecting.
Yeah, and to think that people were saying that this was going to be a write-off year and they were just going to sit around and wait for 2027. You and I were the only ones who called that this was going to be a banger year, and we were so right.
We were believers.
Exactly. And honestly, I don't think that it's going to get fucked up now. I don't think we're jinxing it. The strong manufacturers don't have enough upgrades to really shake things up. We're kind of I think we're in it for the long haul. I think this is going to be a banger year.
I love it.
Do you want to take people through everything step by step from Friday?
Sure. So how were you feeling on Friday? How do you feel about what you saw on Friday?
Well, okay. I was really excited. I was excited for early signs of Aprilia dominance boring fans, as you mentioned earlier. I had in the back of my mind, as I saw Pecco Badnaia fail to put together a fast lap time, that you had predicted him to get 37 points this weekend. How has that gone for you?
You predicted Marc not to get a podium. How's that gone for you?
That almost happened. If Marco Bezzecchi hadn't crashed okay, we'll get to that when we get to Saturday. But yes. Pecco Badnaia, Q1. What's going on there? Answer for your child.
Answer for my child. You've been asking me for several episodes now how I feel about Pecco looking so much better in testing, looking so much happier, sounding upbeat. You've been telling me, Raccoon, Pecco's back. How does that make you feel? And I have been telling you, I have said consistently since day one that it is a question of when, not if, Pecco will tick back over into it's so over. And we are now firmly in it's so over.
I see. It was kind of a rapid decline.
Yes, and I don't think anyone really saw it coming. And I do want to point out, and this is not just me making excuses for Pecco, because he clearly just did not do a good job at all this weekend. But Ducati really also were struggling. This was not a great weekend for Ducati. Not solely a Pecco Badnaia issue, so to speak. So
sure.
I don't think anyone saw Pecco having this bad of a weekend, and I think even considering Ducati's struggles, he had a bad weekend, so to speak. But it is clear that no one else in Ducati had a particularly good weekend either.
Sure, but he was ahead of the curve, let's say, in terms of starting his bad weekend first thing on a Friday morning.
Pecco Badnaia is a Ducati visionary in many ways. And he has been showing us, he has been prophetically projecting the future of Ducati through his garbage swings in performance.
Mm-hmm. Other notable qualifying practice in happenings are Ogura had almost a similar incident, except his first lap was so good in QP that he didn't really need to put together another good one to get through to Q1. He was safe, but that was also a bit of a nail biter in terms of him not really having time to put to send in another fast lap during the second half of the session. Any thoughts on that? He almost beefed what could have been I predicted Ogura fucking. That didn't quite happen, and I think that this was sort of the start of that.
Yeah, he just couldn't put together, spoiler alert, but we saw kind of the same thing happening in qualifying on Saturday. His race pace was great. He was overtaking people late in, I think, both races.
Yes.
If he had qualified higher than where he was, I think
it would have been a very different story.
Yeah, but he didn't.
No.
I will say after Friday, I was I'm very excited because motorcycles are back. I'm very excited because I'm going to get to watch motorcycles this weekend. I was in no way expecting this level of excitement and this level of just excellent racing. And I don't think anyone was.
No, absolutely not. And it started right from the beginning. If we move on to Saturday, both qualifying sessions were bangers.
Absolute bangers.
when, like, how often does that happen? And I think the one moment that stands out for me is that we had like a legendary all-time, like, beautiful qualifying lap for P2 on the grid.
Yeah.
Marc Marquez's P2 lap, not even pole position lap. His P2 lap was so mesmerizing to watch. It immediately reminded me, like, oh, right, we're in the presence of greatness. Like, this is the greatest rider of all time, and this is what he does. Like, it doesn't matter that the cards are no longer falling in his favor. Like, this is what Marc Marquez does, and it was gorgeous to watch. I had fully written him off in that Q2 session before he pulled that off.
And it's a relief, because I think one of the big surprises, at least for me, through this weekend has been how hampered Marc clearly is still by the injury. That he, like, visibly, like, he looks uncomfortable. He says that he's uncomfortable. He says that he has to ride around it. But to then get reminded that this is still Marc fucking Marquez, he can still put together laps like that. He can still just put it all on the line and just pull a lap out of nowhere and make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. This is also where we saw, like, the first signs of Aprilia dominance boring fans. As you have mentioned many times, do you want to take us through that a little bit? With the sole exception of Ogura, who found himself in P8.
I think for me, the big surprise of Q2, honestly, was Raul Fernandez. I mean, really, I should say the big surprise of qualifying, and you can say that was Pecco, but, like, we've seen that before from Pecco.
How surprising that is that anymore?
Yeah, exactly. But Raul Fernandez on Friday, when he was the worst Aprilia, the only one who didn't make it directly into Q2, and you were sort of just like, yeah, that's Raul Fernandez, you know? And then in Q1, he put in a great lap, and then in Q2, he put it on the front row, and then followed that up in both the sprint and the race. I thought was just genuinely extremely impressive. I think, like, Bezzecchi's quali lap was obviously, I mean, I think just a very clear signal to send to the rest of the grid. What was it, like, 4/10? He put 4/10 on Marc. Yeah.
But he'd been doing that pretty much all weekend, and he'd been doing that in the test. So in a lot of ways, I think that a lot of people expected that from him. But something that people maybe expected less, that someone like Adam Wheeler, for example, would have predicted, is just how many crashes he had over the weekend. I think he crashed once in every session pretty much, except the race. Or at least that Saturday, he had the quali crash at the end of Q2 after putting in his pole lap. Like, immediately after putting in his pole lap, he binned it and then ruined the session for everyone else. One last thing for quali before we fully move on is that Pecco Badnaia managed to repeat his qualifying practice performance and double down even, and give us what I'm now calling the Pecco Badnaia triple cheeseburger, which is watching him beef 3 laps in a row in a qualifying session. Just absolutely beefed it.
I think that was just, you know, that was vintage Pecco Badnaia.
Yeah. So the sprint, the Marco Bezzecchi crash. Do you have any thoughts?
I think this weekend, okay, if we look beyond this weekend, I think Aprilia, the way it looks right now, has a bike that is good enough to fight for a world championship. I believe that Marco Bezzecchi has the talent to fight for a world championship. I believe he has really quite exceptional raw pace.
Some would consider that a hot take, but I'm with you.
I'm still not convinced he has the intelligence and maturity to fight for a world championship. And I'm not saying that he won't get there. And I'm not saying, for all I know, he might well get there this season, you know? But this weekend was vintage Pecco Badnaia in that it was exactly what we saw the final third of last season. But it was also kind of what we saw from Bezzecchi the final third of last season, which is that he was clearly the fastest man on track in every session, put it on pole, should have won both races at a canter, but didn't do so entirely through his own mistakes. The same way he did in Indonesia, the same way he did in Australia. And I am happy for Aprilia. I'm happy for Bezzecchi's performance. I think we're going to have a stonking championship fight this year, and I'm so excited about that. But I'm not overly impressed by what happened in the sprint with Bezzecchi. I have to say that.
Which
How do you feel?
It also means that we may indeed have the Aprilia professional bowling team starting from 2027.
I'm honestly also, it is so good. I know we already spoke about qualifying, but it is so good to see Jorge Martín back in the top 5.
Isn't it?
Like the quali lap was great. Like both in the sprint and in the Grand Prix, he was fighting people. He was defending. He was overtaking. He was keeping pace with the other. You know, he didn't look lost. He didn't look out of place in the top 5.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Jorge Martín fan, but it was so nice to see him just like complete a race and perform extremely well. And like it was such a huge sigh of relief. Like, oh, thank God. Like all is right with the world. Because like this is what we missed out from last year. Like, and I really hope that he keeps this streak going and doesn't beat himself up too much this year.
But Bezzecchi crashed out of the sprint and would have won it if he hadn't. I think we can safely say.
Sure, yeah.
Bezzecchi crashing gave us those incredible laps of fighting between Marc Marquez and Pedro Acosta.
I was going to say, you said that this year we're going to have an amazing championship fight on our hands. Do you think that you could include Pedro Acosta, our current championship leader, in that championship fight?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm going to say no, in that I don't think he's going to be a realistic title contender. But I could see him having a similar season to what Marc had in 2024 on the GP23.
All right, yeah, I can see that.
You see what I mean? Where it's like, theoretically, you're still in the championship fight until, like 5 races before the end or something. But at that point, you know, you're like at 80 or 100 points back. I think what Acosta did in the sprint was just so incredibly impressive. I know we will get to the incident. Just an incident in the race. We will get to what we think about Simon Crafar's stewarding of that moment. But even leaving that aside, just those laps of overtaking back and forth, that boy is like... blink. You couldn't blink. That boy is like a terrier. You know, some sort of very small, very angry dog that will just sort of bite into your leg and then just not let go.
Absolutely. That's the best way to put it. For sure.
And he has zero fear of Marc Marquez, and he has zero respect for Marc Marquez. And that is
I don't know about that one. Did you see what they were like after the incident in the cooldown?
Oh, no, I mean, you're misunderstanding me. I'm not saying that he doesn't respect Marc as, you know, as a person, as a champion, whatever. But he has zero, I think.
Oh, you're using it in like the Spanglish racer way of like respecting someone on track in terms of like caring about their physical position on the track and whether or not you give a shit that he's there or not.
No, I don't even mean that. I mean that I think that a lot of other riders, I would say maybe kind of all riders, when they are racing wheel to wheel with Marc Marquez, are very aware that they're racing Marc Marquez, and that the sort of the psychological, you know, you're racing someone who is one of the greatest of all time. You also know you're racing someone who is super aggressive. And so I think a lot of people race Marc just like a teeny tiny bit differently. I think there's a psychological component there. And I just think it's like when Acosta showed up in MotoGP in 2024 and his very first race in Qatar overtook Marc Marquez. And just like, you know, zero thinking about it, zero hesitation, zero. That's what I mean by respect. Like, he doesn't approach it in the like, oh my God, this is Marc Marquez. This is, you know, the however many times world champion.
And I think it's on the inverse. It's like, it's kind of why Marc can get away with as much as he does. Not explicitly not referring to the incident. I mean, aside from the incident, like, I sort of think of it as like bringing a knife to a gunfight, whereas like the other 19 riders have brought knives and Marc Marquez is there with a gun. And so, you know, you can't really do anything because he's got a gun. And so he can get away with murder. And if he knows that you're coming into the fight with a knife, he knows he can get away with murder. He knows that he can push you left, right, and center, and he doesn't have to back out of any of these moves. And Pedro Acosta is the only person bringing a gun to the Marc gunfight.
I cannot wait to see them as teammates next year. I think it's going to be absolute fireworks. I also will say, we've spoken about this before. Part of why that battle between them was so glorious is that they're on different bikes. So, so you could see Pedro overtaking Marc, and then the greater drive and acceleration of Ducati, meaning Marc could get Pedro back on the straight.
So many of your prophecies came true.
Except Pecco Badnaia 37.
we don't have to talk about that one. We really don't have to talk about that one. But like exactly what you said about like riders on different manufacturers fighting each other. Absolutely that. Like you could reliably predict where in the lap Pedro would overtake Marc and where in the lap Marc would overtake Pedro, which resulted in the aforementioned incident. What is your take on the very first controversial moment of our season?
And what a gloriously controversial moment it was as well.
Delicious.
Finally, some good fucking race, as Gordon Ramsay would have said. I support the penalty. I know this is contrary to the internet majority right now. I don't particularly care.
I can smell the tiki torches burning.
Hell yeah.
The angry mob.
Yeah, I don't particularly care. I think I do want to say, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with the penalty, I'm very happy they did it the way they did it, even though it was so late in the race, that they managed to like land on it, have these 3 stewards agree on it, and implement it before the race was finished.
Yes.
I really would not have liked to see Marc cross the finish line first,
and then have the result taken away. Yeah.
45 minutes later in the steward's office, and then Pedro being like gifted his first win after the fact and not getting that experience. It just really would have rubbed everyone the wrong way, I think.
And I disagree with the penalty, but I can still happily make that argument. I think that people are so quick to jump on Simon Crafar's throat. They forget that this is an example of why they hired him. And this is an example of him doing his job correctly, making a quick and firm decision with conviction, with reasoning, and he can draw whatever line in the sand that he wants to draw. It's his game and everyone else is playing it, right? And that's exactly the kind of conviction that you want from your head steward. And that's exactly the kind of conviction that has already started saving lives in Moto2 and Moto3. When you see some of the horrendously behaved riding behavior that you sometimes see in the lower classes, that's why they hired Simon Crafar. So it might rub you the wrong way. Personally, it did rub me the wrong way. I didn't love the decision. But in terms of why the decision was made, who was making the decision, and whether it sets a good precedent for the series, I think absolutely it does.
I also think this in particular was a no-win scenario for the stewards. Because right now everyone is saying, let them race, or we're gonna ban block passes, where's the line gonna be drawn? And then people are pointing to Bastianini's overtake on Martin on the final lap in Misano in 2024 as an example of but that wasn't penalized. And it was not penalized in part because it was on the final lap. People are forgetting how angry everyone was after that race at that not getting penalized. It's
also
not
everyone was like, I can't wait for Simon Crafar to come on board because he would never let this slide.
It's not like there was an internet consensus 2 years ago that was definitely the right stewarding decision. A lot of people thought Martin got hard done by. And so I think if the stewards had not given Marc a penalty, I could totally see the argument for that too. But then I think we would still be there would still be a controversy, and people would say that Marc robbed Pedro of the win and the stewards are blind. And I also, if I'm sure we've all watched the replay of that particular incident a number of times now. If you'd seen that incident with Morbidelli, everyone would be like, classic Morbidelli, what an outrage. When will he get a race ban? I mean, not for this incident.
Not even that. If Pedro pulled what Marc pulled, all the same people saying how it was such bullshit and total nonsense Marc fans. Count myself among them. Huge Marc fan here. Huge Marc fan over there. You know, if Pedro did that to Marc, everyone would be up in arms. It doesn't even have to be someone with a horrific reputation like Morbidelli. I think the victim can matter almost as much as the perpetrator. And that's exactly like you were saying, it's a no-win situation. The sheer number of people who would complain this way around versus the other way around, I think makes it sort of amplifies the no-winness of the situation. You know what I mean? Even though it's 50-50 in terms of like whether any individual person would agree with the penalty or not, depending on who's the perpetrator and who's the victim. I think it's not 50-50 in terms of the overall number of people who would complain, because there are just way more Marc fans than there are Pedro fans, or way more Marc fans than fucking Morbidelli fans for that matter. Like, you know what I mean?
We did also, this is important to remember, because people are saying, you know, if this is the line the stewards are drawing, they're making actual racing impossible. This incident happened after multiple laps of genuinely exceptional racing, which was not penalized. Yeah. And I also, because right now I feel like we're kind of dragging everyone who is criticizing the penalty. And that is certainly not the point. Like I said, I can understand the argument for why it should not be penalized. But I don't think it's a straightforward. I'm not
dragging them. I agree with them. It shouldn't have been a penalty. I've said that from the get-go. It's just that I'm trying to illustrate like why it feels so obvious to such a large group of people. And that I want to tell that large group of people that maybe it would not be so obvious to you if things were any different. I'm sure they already know that, because they already know that they're fans, and part of the fun of being a fan is to be biased. That's why we do this. That's why we love sport, and that's why we're fans of riders. But yeah, that's just how I feel on that. No dragging there. I'm with you. I do think Simon Crafar is still doing a good job, though. Even if I don't agree with every single decision he makes.
In the sprint, we had an Aprilia 3, 4, and 5.
Yes. The foreshadowing intensifies. It
also, it was a case of a friend texted me saying the final result was Alien, Aprilia.
I mean, I guess it's true.
If not for Bezzecchi crashing, obviously we should have had another Aprilia in front. Though I will say, in fairness, you could also say if Digia and Alex Marquez hadn't had that incident, I think there would be more Ducatis further up.
Yeah, true.
We did see, you know, both Pedro and Marc were behaving very nicely afterwards. Marc congratulated Pedro, even though I'm sure he was firmly displeased with the stewards.
This is another point that goes against public favor of the penalty, is just that the person who was the benefactor of the penalty is arguably the one rider in the grid who doesn't want to benefit from that. Like, I think any other rider would happily take the W. Pedro's the one guy who's like, no, if I eat dinner tonight, I want to kill the chicken with my own hands and rip its head off. You know, like, I want to kill it. He wants to kill his meat. It's the same part of him that doesn't respect Marc on track, for example. It's that same element of him that also doesn't really want to benefit from penalties like this.
I think, like I said, there is controversy over the penalty. I suspect it's going to blow over reasonably quickly.
Yeah, people are going to forget in like also 2 rounds.
And the race, the Sunday race, was also really good. There are lots of other things to discuss now. I don't think it's going to be like a topic of contention for long.
And they should forget. I don't think it's a huge deal.
Let's move on to the race. How would you rate the race? Or you don't have to give it a number, but how do you feel about the Sunday race? I think we can agree that Saturday was like a classic.
Yeah, Saturday was an all-time classic. Many, many, many laps of hard, close fighting, excitement, everything you want and more. Sunday was like a little bit less of that, but like just a little bit. I was still very, very, very happy to watch the Sunday race.
I think Marc clearly, I don't know if he was struggling with his shoulder. I suspect he might have been. During the sprint on Saturday, he finished a sprint, which is 13 laps. That's the longest run of laps he has done this year on a MotoGP bike. Yes, he did, because in Sepang, he did a 10-lap sprint sim, which I guess in length is not that different. And then for the Buriram test, he fell off on lap 6 during his race sim. He has not done more than 10 laps consecutively on a MotoGP bike since...
I think 10 laps of Sepang is probably longer than 13 laps of Buriram. But yeah, I see your point.
And with this injury and also, of course, like fighting Acosta the whole time.
Yeah.
It was really weird seeing the race start today and just seeing him lap by lap just get swallowed up by more riders.
Yes, that was super freaky. I think I posted a washed goat meme in the Paddock Pass Discord channel at the time. But what was crazy to me is just a couple laps later, he overtook them both back in one move. So it's like the goat is not completely washed, but you can tell that there's signs of struggle with the bike, maybe. Ducati bad 2026, maybe. Concessions worked. Gigi Dall'Igna locked in a bird cage, like a little parakeet.
I want to say to the YouTube commenter who has been spamming our comment sections.
Yeah, there's one guy who, no matter what we post, it doesn't even have to be related.
There's this one YouTube commenter who has been posting these long rants about quote unquote Pecco Badnaia under every video we post, and if we don't respond to it, this person starts posting it under other comment threads, and they post it from multiple accounts. And I just want to say, whoever you are, Pecco Badnaia person, good on you. Like, so far,
I hope they hold their local politicians accountable with as much rigor as they're holding us accountable for not shitting on Pecco Badnaia enough.
You are fully vindicated so far. Good on you. Want to talk about what happened with Marc's rear tire?
You mean his rim job?
Yes.
I don't know why you're so surprised. You saw that was in the notes. Marc's rear tire. I actually have some answers for you. So, a certain wet frog on Twitter posted a little screen cap of a crash article, Lewis Duncan article, but it was said in a press briefing. So I'm sure like lots of other journalists have also printed it. But that's just where I saw it. And the truth come out. Turns out he didn't, as I suspected, completely destroy his rim by falling off the tall side of the curb on the outside of the corner. He had actually already bent the rim a little bit on the inside of the corner entering, and that caused a small rear puncture, which of course he could feel immediately because he's Marc Marquez, which caused him to like sit up, run wide, and then he fell off the big curb on the other side, and then the already leaking, already slightly flat, damaged tire then took a much bigger chunk out of the rim, which is those two big dents that you saw in the slow-mo replay, and completely destroyed it. And apparently Piero Teramatsu has been saying that this has been happening all weekend. So anytime you see another puncture on another rider, this is the Michelin company line. Whether you believe it or not is another story. Like, they could be potentially hiding some of their own tires' defects, as they probably want to do if there are any. But the official story is that the rims are just so hot in Thailand that they're kind of soft. And Thailand has those very high double curbs, which Marc insisted that he's been taking all weekend with no problems. But sometimes the hot, soft metal of the rim just hits the double curb wrong and bends, and that breaks the seal of the tire and starts to cause leakage. So he had a double whammy, which is what caused such a dramatic failure of his tire. But plenty of other riders have had similar things all weekend. Jorge Martín had it on Saturday. Joan Mir had it on Sunday as well.
I mean, most of all, I think we should just all be extremely grateful that he did not have a horrible accident.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
that looked like it could have gotten really ugly.
What a legend for saving it. All that motocross.
What a legend for saving it.
Yeah.
I struggle to think of any other rider who would have saved it.
I wouldn't go that far because they're kind of all amazing, but yeah, he is special, isn't he?
It felt very Marcus-esque.
Yes, for sure. For sure. It's like one of those, like, it's going in the compilation. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
20 years from now, some kid's going to make an insane Marquez saves compilation, and that's going in the folder.
Do you think Aprilia is winning any championship this year? Not just necessarily the riders, but do you feel like they could be, even if, let's say, Marc still takes the riders title, that Aprilia could take like the team title or constructors title?
Yes, and I don't even think it'd be hard. If they keep this form up, I mean, I've been saying this since our very first episode, so this is not like I'm recency biasing it just based on round one. I've been this crazy from the beginning. Like, I'm not just hopping on the hype train. I truly think that they've made a serious step and that their momentum, keyword, is going upwards. I think it would take a serious fuck up to knock them off of their perch. 1, 3, 4, 5 is a serious statement to make in round one. Yeah. Especially following up the 3, 4, 5 from the sprint. So yeah, I really don't see why not. Constructor and team.
And a follow-up on that. We are both pretty convinced Marco Bezzecchi is going to be a title contender this year, and that all signs point to that. You asked me if I think Pedro Acosta can be considered a serious title contender, and I gave some caveats to that answer. How are you feeling about Jorge Martín?
I like that he's in the mix, but I would add similar caveats to him that you added to Pedro Acosta earlier. And I mean, you compared Pedro Acosta to Marc on a GP 23.
Yeah.
Which, like, in Jorge Martín's case, I think he is the GP 23. The RSGP is Marc Marquez, if that makes any sense. But I think the general principle still applies. But also, what you just asked me a second ago made me think, do you think Trackhouse could win Satellite Team of the Year over Grassini?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like, you know, we are all overreacting based on one race.
Yeah, one race.
We know this is going to be, you know, this, like, we're going to come back and it's all going to be very different.
They're going to use normal tires and
they're going to use normal tires.
Yeah.
Yes. But thinking about it, especially with Aldeguer missing now at the start, and even when he comes back, it's going to take him some rounds to get up to speed. Alex Marquez did not have a good weekend. Not an awful weekend either, just like a very mid weekend. Yeah,
for sure. Can I just say, earlier you said that Pecco Bagnaia's weekend was mid, and I think that, and you said that based on the fact that other Ducatis also had a rough time. Both the VR46s finished ahead of him in Sunday. I think he had a worse than mid weekend. I think it was a shit weekend for him.
Daxa.
Yes.
A shit weekend for Pecco Bagnaia.
No, you can't keep moving the goalposts.
No. I'm so fucking serious. A shit weekend for Pecco Bagnaia after what happened at the end of last season is crashing out of P16 behind Samkia Chantra, which happened repeatedly last year. Let us not forget.
Don't remind me.
He finished a Grand Prix for the first time since Motegi. It's been 5 months since Pecco Bagnaia finished a Sunday race. He finished a race. He finished it, like P9, P8, something like that. I don't know. Like, right. It was, is that a good performance? No. But like, he finished and scored points, which he did not do for all of the end of last season in every Sunday race.
All right. Well, you can feel free to give him a participation trophy for that. And but that's what
I'm saying. I'm not calling it a good weekend. I'm not calling it a great weekend, but I'm calling it a mid weekend.
Pedro Acosta not winning that race. Do you think that if he had a slightly less than abysmal start, this is someone who we can usually rely on having pretty good starts, and then he sort of just like wavered a bit, and then ended up back in 6th, and then he stayed in 6th for a few laps, which is like opening laps is kind of when you want to make some moves. And I think that just made his life a bit harder for himself.
I don't think there was any way Pedro Acosta was winning this race if Bezzecchi was staying upright.
He was only 4 seconds back.
But he was 4 seconds back and Bezzecchi was not pushing.
Okay.
Bezzecchi was managing the race. And this felt to me like Indonesia last year when like Aldeguer just fucked right off. And Acosta got a very hard fought P2.
Mm-hmm.
I think if, let's say Acosta makes like the lightning starts of all KTM starts and somehow manages to get to like P2 or even the front by the first couple of corners, I still think Bezzecchi would have passed him, and I think Bezzecchi would have disappeared. Also, we have not spoken about the biggest surprise of the weekend, which is Pedro Acosta has won a race of some sort.
Yes, but he himself says it doesn't count, and I kind of want to respect his wishes.
Are we respecting Pedro Acosta's wishes on this?
Well, we don't have to. You're a statistician, so I'm sure you're probably more inclined to like take the number that's on the website.
I also think it makes the most sense to look at Sunday victories in the context of these stats, so you can compare it with more than like 3 years.
Sure.
Basically, my question to you is: can I keep calling Pedro Acosta the Aaron Canet of MotoGP?
You were never allowed to. He has 2 world championships.
But not in MotoGP.
Okay. That's enough out of you. That's enough out of you.
So, 11 Sunday podiums.
Yeah.
The record for most podiums before first victory is 20, held by Zarco. And I still think there's a chance that he beats that.
Yeah, I think there's a chance. I do think that, like, vibes-wise, though, the thing that separates him from Aaron Canet is that Aaron Canet regularly threw away victories. Yeah. And Pedro Acosta has had to fight tooth and nail for every single one of his podiums.
Yeah.
Like, it was never like there was one victory that he threw away.
Oh, Motegi, 2024. This was when he started on pole. His one and only pole, and he crashed out of the lead both in the sprint and the race.
Yeah.
Or maybe in the race he crashed from like P3 or something. But he had pole and he crashed out of both races, and it was entirely self-inflicted.
That was rough. That broke my heart. Give him a bike that can land on the front row more often. I think that you'll have less of an issue there. Like, if that's your one and only chance of winning a race, I kind of understand like the stress getting to you and binning it. But if you're in a position to win a race more often, and it's not like you're killing yourself to get to P3.
To me, at least, Pedro Acosta is very firmly my rider of the weekend.
To you and a lot of people, I think.
I think what he's doing on genuinely not a very competitive bike against bikes that are substantially better is just so impressive.
Yeah, and your friend called him an alien earlier. You mentioned it was alien, Aprilia. Are we comfortable calling Pedro Acosta an alien?
I think it's hard to say anything about that until we see him on a bike that I can actually fight for things on the regular. But like, yeah, if there are non-Marc Marquez aliens on the grid, I would say Quartararo and Acosta have the best claims to it. I
agree with you. I do think, though, I don't think that we necessarily need to see him on a good bike to call him an alien. Like, if he's on like a 2019 Honda, does he pull a Marc Marquez 2019? That's what I want to see.
Yeah. Also, Brad Binder resurgence was not something I saw coming.
No,
I have to say,
but I'm happy for him.
Last year, my big hopes going into the season last year was that I wanted to see a Bezzecchi redemption arc, which we got, which was amazing. Joan Mir redemption arc, which we kind of got at the end of the season. Alex Rins redemption arc, which we absolutely did not get in any way, shape, or form. And never will, tragically. I think a Brad Binder redemption arc this year would be just really, really good for the sport, for the spectacle. He's such a fun racer to watch.
Yeah.
He does not belong in P16.
For sure.
And it's been painful watching him there. And
he's
I also
the
just
original Mr. Sideways also. Like, you heard in the cool down car after the sprint, Raul mentioning how much tighter Pedro's lines are than Marc's. Something that I mentioned watching the Sepang test in person as well. So it was nice to see my observation vindicated by a professional rider who was following them for a whole sprint. Yeah, like Binder is famously someone who has a very similar riding style. Like sideways into every turn and then tightening all the entries. And it's just weird that they have such similar riding styles and that he was so far behind for so long.
I find it hilarious that we get Acosta, one of Acosta's best weekends in MotoGP, if not the best weekend. We get Günther Resurgent, and then the Tech 3 boys have an absolute stinker.
That was
I'm calling that the Günther Steiner effect.
Yeah, you know what? You might be right. It doesn't matter how many Jorge Lorenzo training sessions you go through. All it takes is for Günther Steiner to buy your team, and then you may as well just like flush all your effort down the toilet.
Yeah.
Not through any fault of his own. As far as I can tell, he hasn't made any decisions in that team. It's just his sheer presence and bad juju.
He is the human embodiment of unshittification.
Sure. That's really hard.
It's really hard. Okay, I also want to say, like, I don't actually... there are mixed opinions on Günther Steiner, but he was, by all accounts, I mean, he really did create a Formula One team out of nothing and drag it to higher championship positions.
Sure, but you can no doubt say that the moment he left, his successor immediately made that team 10 times better.
Correct. Daxa.
Yes.
How do you feel about Toprak's debut?
I was just going to say, Toprak Razgatlıoğlu and Diogo Moreira both. I'm quite pleased with them.
I'm quite pleased with them.
I think they both have performances that they can be proud of. They can stand behind that and say, I deserve my spot in this championship. I belong. Let's go. Diogo Moreira 13th and 15th. Toprak was like 9th, I think, in the sprint. Where was he?
No. He crashed out of the sprint.
Oh, right. Yeah, but he was running in the top 10 when he crashed.
Yeah, or like not quite. But he was basically he was tailing Jack Miller. He was the second highest Yamaha for basically the entire sprint and then crashed towards the end. But it was like genuinely really impressive. And I have to say far above what I expected.
And ignoring the fact that I said that it would be Fabio Quartararo, then Toprak Razgatlıoğlu, and not Jack Miller and Toprak Razgatlıoğlu, I did at least get correct that he would be the second fastest Yamaha. So as long as that keeps happening, vindicated once more.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think the doubters can get the hell out of here. He's definitely he deserves his place.
And I think it's particularly fun because I expect him to just get better and better. Like he clearly has a steep mountain to climb, considering just the transition from World Superbikes. And the fact that he's managed to adapt this well when the tests looked not shaky, but like they did not look great.
No, and that bike is still 10 kilometers an hour slower than all the other ones on every straight
bike. Yeah.
Yeah. He barely fits on his bike. I mean, that's something I can relate to. I'm exactly the same height as him. And just like, yeah, like I've been training on 150cc motorcycles and it's just a nightmare. Like we have to change everything. We have to like pull the seat all the way up, like stack a bunch of stuff under the seat unit, and it's just a nightmare. Who is your star pupil of the weekend who gets a little good behavior sticker?
My star pupil of the weekend is Pedro Acosta.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think he did, and I think he's a star pupil in the true sense of the word as well, in that a year ago, I mean, it's like night and day. Yes, the bike is slightly better, but it's not that much better.
No, and not by a long shot.
A year ago, he just did not have the maturity to deal with the situation KTM was in. He did not have the maturity to be a leader for that team in a very difficult situation, both on track, but especially off track, obviously. And he has grown up so much. He has matured so much. He was doing an excellent job in both races. He was fighting hard but clean. And he is, he comes out of the weekend leading the world championship and deserving of it, TBH.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about you? Who's your star pupil?
I think a strong argument can be made for Raul Fernandez, but I'm going with you. I think it's Pedro Acosta. I just wanted to shout out to Raul because that was quite an impressive and consistent performance in pretty much every session. He maximized, I think, his potential this whole weekend.
Does that mean we should give the Star Teacher Award to David Brivio?
Yeah, we might have to. He might be Employee of the Month at the MotoGirlyPops Racing Academy.
All right. So those are our star pupil for both of us is Pedro Acosta with Raul Fernandez as a good number 2. Who's going in your naughty corner?
My
Simon Crafar?
No. Simon Crafar, first of all, is the principal. Okay? He does not go in the naughty corner. He decides who goes in the naughty corner. I don't know. I think Pecco Badnaia, naughty corner for you. That was just ridiculous. I mean, it's one thing to like crack under pressure and like crash or whatever it is, but to just like make a little mistake and have to back out of a quali lap 3 times in a row, 2 sessions in a row is just
not
ridiculous.
acceptable.
No, that's unacceptable.
Who is going in my naughty corner? You know what I'm putting in my naughty corner? Joan Mir's rear tire.
Okay.
I thought that had no business giving out at that particular time. It was highly damaging to my fantasy team. It was also highly damaging to my hopes and dreams of a Joan Mir top 6 finish. I just, I understand. I know that Mir crashes out a lot. I know that a lot of these incidents are caused by him. But he really does also have just like the shittiest luck in a lot of these situations.
He does. They're not all his fault.
Exactly. Or just like having random bike issues when he's running in a high position, that sort of thing. And it just felt like another one of those. And
can I just say though, like he was in 6th. That's his natural habitat. He spends most of his time in 6th. We look back and that's when he has a good bike.
I also 6th was also the position of the highest Ducati, was it not?
It sure was.
Which is funny because the last time we had a top 5 with not a 0 Ducati was the 2020 European Grand Prix, which is also notable for being the one MotoGP race that Joan Mir has ever won.
Yes.
So
during his championship year.
During his championship year. So Joan Mir's championship year was the last time we had a race without a Ducati in the top 5.
And that was a weird year too.
And I hope we get more of it. I hope Ducati have genuine weaknesses now and not just tracks where they're going to finish P2 instead of P1.
Yes, for sure. Can I ask you something? Can I ask if you would be so kind as to approve or deny a bold prediction for me?
Go ahead.
Do you think it's possible that Pedro Acosta has a Joan Mir-esque World Championship winning season where he wins like maybe only 1 race and then wins the championship?
You mean this year?
Yes, this year. He's leading. He hasn't won anything.
Just like, you already told me that you regret not predicting Marco Bezzecchi for the championship, but you didn't want to like go totally bananas.
Yeah,
this is totally bananas, and I think this is great.
But now I'm asking you to be bananas. I'm chickening out. I would never make such a ridiculous proposition. How dare you? I would never say something so completely nonsensical. I'm asking, do you feel like that's even possible?
I can keep seeing scenarios where the top 5 finishers every weekend is going to be like Ducati, Aprilia, Ducati, and then like Pedro Acosta thrown in somewhere.
Sure. And that's just what I love about this season is that like there are so many strong players that like if you tried to vibe a top 5, you'd be like, oh, but what about this person? Oh, but what about this person? Because there's just that many strong players. And I love that about the season. That's how I know it's going to be a banger.
One last thing.
Yeah.
So we discussed our star pupil, Pedro Acosta. We hope he has many more such weekends. We discussed our naughty corner. Who would you give the participation trophy? Who was present all weekend and completely invisible?
Toprak.
I don't agree. I think Toprak did well. I'm giving a shout to Luca Marini.
Oh no, that's invisible. That's really
right.
Invisible.
Like I feel like
I as well performed really well. I don't think anyone noticed.
Yeah, just like I feel like Marini was chilling around P11 pretty much every session and like did fine. I did not see him on the camera one single time all weekend.
Yeah,
you could have removed him and I would not have known.
Sure. Is that worthy of a sticker? What kind of precedent are we setting here?
I'm giving him the participation trophy.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us, Luca Marini. It was nice having you. It's always nice having you. I did see him on camera one time, actually, when he rode on the back of a 3-wheeled Goldwing. But that was it. That was the only time I saw him. Speaking of 3-wheeled Goldwings, the tuk-tuk race. Come on now. That was great.
That was amazing. The riders loved it. There was riders were saying that it was the most fun. I think it was Bezzecchi said that it was the most fun pre-race thing that they'd ever done.
And of course it is. Give them underbones for Sepang.
This opening weekend has been just a gold mine for content.
For sure.
If Liberty Media know what they're about and or watch our recommendations from the last episode, I hope that they're pushing the clips from this weekend, including the tuk-tuk race, in every channel.
I have seen them being pushed quite aggressively, and I'm very grateful for that fact. I think it's going to be a good year. They're definitely maximizing their crazy harebrained schemes. Love the tuk-tuk challenge. What a great idea. This is something I've been asking for basically since I started watching in 2022. So every time they come to Asia, I want them to engage in our very unique and interesting local motorcycling culture.
I just want to quickly touch on Moto2. Specifically, we had 2 red flags. I mean, the whole race was kind of weird, broken up twice, very shortened. But the first red flag was due to this horrible crash where I guess it was Senna ages had an issue with his bike. So the bike just kind of gave up, and then David Alonso rode into him and immediately high-sided. And then David Alonso got hit by Philip Salich, who had nowhere to go, I think was the order of events.
And I just felt it was so unfortunate that it was center of the screen on the camera, on the broadcast. If it was me, I wouldn't want to watch that again. That's one of those MotoGP clips where it's you really fear for someone's life, because you could see his head get knocked by the rear wheel of, I think, Salich, and that's nightmare scenario. That's literally nightmare scenario. A head on a wheel is how people die. And I'm very, very glad to report that he only has minor scuffs and bruises on his arms and legs somehow.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Holy shit. It was in the moment, it was terrifying.
So yeah, we are obviously just very, very happy to see that he's okay. I saw that he's posted on Instagram now, just saying that he's doing okay and is very thankful for that. So in addition to MotoGP, Moto2 and Moto3, we've been watching Moto4 Asia Cup this weekend. Daksha, do you want to take us through what happened there?
That's true. We saw both races won by Hayato Chishiki, which is kind of crazy because it's Moto4, so it's very Moto3 style races. Both races saw kind of 2 huge groups. The first group of riders is more than 15 riders sometimes. So people are trading places all the time. We saw some good elbow-to-elbow action between Chishiki and Kapil Irfan, as well as Mohamed Badli and Bintang Pranata, for example. And of course, our first woman in racing this year, Chen Shiyu, who I'm pleased to announce managed to stick with the second group the whole way through both races and wasn't left trailing far behind, which can be a really tough position to be in. I don't know if any of you watch the Red Bull Rookies Cup documentaries, but sometimes they have rookies who get in there who just find themselves in that position, and then it's a really hard place to work out of mentally when you're traveling around the world or around the continent in this case, and competing at the top level for your age group, and you're just constantly reminded that you're just not really at that level. So very, very pleased to see her actually put in solid she was doing 149s the whole time, consistent lap times, and sticking with that second group. So yeah, happy to see that from her. That's a big improvement from last year.
And this coming week, we have our second woman in racing making her season debut. Kaylee Jakob is going to be racing at Daytona in the Moto America Supersport class. We're very excited to see how she gets going, how the season unfolds for her.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that because the Daytona 200 is always kind of a strange race in the Moto America calendar. It kicks off the season, and I'm kind of curious to see if she's still on the previous generation Ducati V2 at her Rahal team, because on that kind of like big sort of speedway American track, I think the previous generation, it might be one of the only places where the previous generation bike ends up being even faster than the current one. So curious to see how that turns out, and always very, very, very excited to see Kayla race.
I have a final question for you, Daksha, before we wrap up. I believe quite firmly that what we saw in MotoGP this weekend, the sprint and the Grand Prix, I believe that if this weekend had happened last year, it would have been the best weekend of the year, hands down.
Yeah.
In terms of just like the quality of the racing, the shock results, the Aprilia dominance, like there were all these elements mixing it up to just make it a really, really, really excellent weekend.
Sure, yeah, I'm with you there.
I am curious to hear if you believe, did we peak at the beginning? Or are we going to have at least one weekend later in the year where we can say, okay, this weekend was better than Thailand?
I think we might have peaked at the beginning. It's certainly a possibility. But the fact that we can't say for sure means that it's going to be a good season regardless. So whether this is the peak or not, I think it's going to be a banger year. So I'm happy either way.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, we are going to round up for now. A reminder that we are on every podcasting platform. We do have a link to an RSS feed, so you can put us on whichever podcasting platform you listen. We also have a fantasy league. We will link to that in the description below. You can join that and humiliate us. That's going to be fun. And let us know in the comments below what you thought of the race. Are you ready with your pitchforks for Simon Crafar? Do you think our predictions of a Pedro Acosta title fight are totally off? Let us know and we will respond.
Yeah, thanks, guys. See you in 3 weeks.
See you.
You're a statistician.
I'm a statistician.
You're a stereo expander. Yeah, you're a statistician. Fuck me. I can't say it. You're a statistician. So